If nothing changes between now and 2032, the average Social Security check could shrink by roughly $500 a month. That's not a prediction from a blogger or a talking head on cable news. That's the government's own number, released just weeks ago in the official 2026 Trustees Report. And here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. This cut wouldn't need a single vote in Congress to happen. It happens automatically, by default, unless lawmakers step in first. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this report says, why the timeline just moved up, what it actually means for your check, and what, if anything, you can do about it. Every year, the Social Security Board of Trustees puts out a report to Congress that functions like a financial checkup for the program. This year's version came out on June 9, 2026, and it moved the bad news forward by a full year compared to last year's report. Here's the headline finding. The trust fund that pays retirement and survivor benefits, officially called the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Fund, or OASI, is now projected to run out of reserves in the fourth quarter of 2032. That's about 6 years from now. Last year, the same report had that date sitting in early 2033. A year got shaved off in 12 months. There's a second smaller fund, the Disability Insurance Fund, and that one is actually in fine shape. Trustees project it can pay full benefits for the next 75 years without issue. The real pressure point is squarely on the retirement and survivor side, the fund that the vast majority of people watching this video are either drawing from now or will be drawing from eventually. This is the single most misunderstood part of this whole topic, so let's slow down here. Depleted does not mean Social Security disappears. It does not mean checks stop showing up. Here's what actually happens. Social Security is funded mainly through payroll taxes, the 6.2% that comes out of most paychecks, matched by employers. For years, that incoming tax revenue has not been quite enough to cover what's going out in benefits, so the program has been drawing down a reserve fund built up over previous decades to cover the gap. Once that reserve hits zero in late 2032, the program can only pay out what it's collecting in real time from current payroll taxes. No more topping it off from savings. According to this year's report, that would mean the fund can still cover about 78% of scheduled benefits using ongoing tax revenue alone. Some independent estimates, including one from the Congressional Budget Office, put the resulting cut closer to 28% once you account for the following year's numbers. Either way, we're talking about an automatic, across-the-board reduction of somewhere between roughly 1/5 and 1/4 of everyone's benefit. Not a total shutoff, but a real and immediate cut to what retirees, survivors, and their families actually receive. Numbers like 22% or 78% are easy to hear and hard to actually feel. So let's translate this into an actual paycheck. The average Social Security retirement benefit for 2026 sits at roughly $2,071 a month, following this year's 2.8% cost of living increase. Apply a cut in the neighborhood of 22 to 24% to that number, and you're looking at something close to $450 to $500 less landing in the average retiree's account every single month, starting the moment the fund runs dry. For a married couple who are each drawing an average benefit, some estimates put the combined household hit north of $10,000 a year. If Social Security is your main or only source of income, which according to AARP describes a huge share of current retirees, that's not a rounding error, that's rent, that's groceries, that's a medication copay. And here's the part worth sitting with. This isn't some far-off hypothetical for a future generation. If you're in your late 50s or 60s watching this right now, 2032 falls squarely within your own retirement. So why did the projections suddenly get worse? The trustees pointed to a few specific factors, and I want to walk through them plainly, without taking a side on any of it. This part of the story crosses party lines and involves decisions made under different administrations over many years. First, demographics. The trustees revised their fertility rate assumption downward to roughly 1.75 children per woman, and lowered projected immigration numbers as well. Both of those shrink the future pool of workers paying into the system. Back in 1960, there were more than 5 workers paying in for every one person collecting benefits. Today, that ratio is under 3 to 1, and it's expected to keep falling. Second, a piece of tax legislation. Last year's tax law, commonly referred to as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, included a larger standard deduction for seniors, which, as a side effect, reduces the amount of tax revenue that flows into the Social Security Trust Fund from taxation of benefits. The trustees specifically cited this provision as a contributing factor to the accelerated timeline. This isn't a commentary on whether that tax policy was good or bad for individual seniors' pocketbooks in the short term. It's simply a mechanical fact about how it affects the trust fund's math. Third, higher than expected Medicare costs and other program expenses played a role in the broader trustees' report, alongside the aging of the workforce itself as more of the large baby boomer generation moves into retirement. Put together, the trustees now estimate a 75-year funding shortfall of about $30 trillion, up from around $26 trillion the year before. If this all sounds alarming, it's worth knowing this isn't the first time Social Security has stared down a depletion date. Back in the early 1980s, the program was projected to run out of money within months, an even more urgent situation than today's. Congress responded in 1983 with a set of reforms, benefits started being taxed for higher earners, and the full retirement age was gradually raised from 65 towards 67, a phase-in that only finished completing in recent years. That crisis was resolved through legislation, not through benefits simply running out. The current situation is different in one important way, though. Back then, lawmakers acted with roughly the same urgency the numbers demanded. This time, trustees have been flagging a depletion date somewhere between 2033 and 2036 for over a decade, and so far, no comparable legislative fix has been passed. There's no shortage of proposed solutions floating around Washington. This section isn't me picking a favorite, just laying out what's actually on the table. One option is raising the payroll tax cap. Right now, income above $184,500 for 2026 isn't subject to Social Security tax at all. Raising or eliminating that cap would bring in significantly more revenue from higher earners. Another option is raising payroll tax rates generally, which spreads the cost across nearly every working person rather than concentrating it on high earners. A third option is adjusting benefits going forward. Things like further raising the retirement age, changing the formula used to calculate cost of living increases, or means testing benefits for very high-income retirees. A fourth option, which some lawmakers have floated, is allowing the retirement fund and the disability fund to be combined administratively, which the trustees note would push the combined depletion date out to 2034 instead of 2032, buying a couple of extra years, though it would require the disability fund to share its healthier reserves. Every one of these comes with trade-offs, and reasonable people, including economists across the political spectrum, disagree about which mix makes the most sense. What almost everyone studying this agrees on is one thing. The earlier Congress acts, the more gradual and less painful the eventual fix can be. Here's where I want to shift from the scary headline to something useful, because there are concrete steps worth taking regardless of what Congress eventually decides. First, check your own numbers. Log into your My Social Security account at ssa.gov and look at your actual projected benefit. Everyone's situation is different based on earnings history and claiming age, and having your real number, not the national average, makes planning far more useful. Second, understand your claiming age options. Claiming before your full retirement age permanently reduces your monthly benefit. Waiting past it up until age 70 permanently increases it. Even in a future with a possible benefit cut, a higher starting benefit before any reduction is applied leaves you in a better position than a lower one. Third, if retirement is still some years off, treat Social Security as one leg of the stool rather than the whole plan. This isn't financial advice specific to your situation, that's a conversation for a licensed financial advisor, but diversifying retirement income, where possible, reduces how exposed you are to any single program's changes. Fourth, stay informed rather than anxious. This report comes out every year and the date has moved around before. Congress has roughly 6 years from today before the OASI fund's current projected depletion date. That's not nothing. Plenty of time exists for a legislative fix, the same way it existed and was used back in 1983. I want to be very clear about one mechanical fact because it's the part that gets lost in a lot of the coverage. Under current law, Congress does not need to pass anything for a benefit cut to happen in 2032. The default automatic outcome if nothing changes is the reduced payment. It's action that would be required to prevent a cut, not action that causes one. That said, it's worth remembering that Social Security has never, in its 90-year history, missed a scheduled payment to a single beneficiary. Every projected crisis to date has ultimately been addressed through legislation before benefits were actually reduced. Whether that pattern holds this time is something nobody, including me, can promise you. But it's the honest historical track record, and it belongs in this conversation alongside the warning. So here's the short version. The 2026 Trustees Report moved the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund's depletion date to late 2032, a year earlier than last year's estimate. If nothing changes, benefits would automatically drop to somewhere around 78% of their scheduled amount, which for the average retiree works out to roughly $450 to $500 less a month. The causes are a mix of demographic shifts and recent tax policy changes, and several legislative fixes exist on paper. It's simply a matter of whether and when Congress acts. Check your own benefit estimate, understand your claiming options, and keep an eye on this story because it's going to keep evolving between now and 2032. If this helped you understand what's actually in this report instead of just the scary headline, subscribe. I'll be covering every update on this as it develops.